If you're wanting to get some great professional photos that you can use to promote your business, but all you've got is your humble smartphone, stay tuned and I'll show you how. Hello, welcome to Rocketland TV. My name's Jonas Stewart. Thanks for joining me today. So if you didn't check out the last episode, we talked about visual communications and the importance of getting it right and how to audit the visual communications that you currently have. So please go and check it out. I'm sure you'll find it valuable. But today we're going to talk about photography within your business and how to build up a really good professional photo library, but without any fancy gear. In fact, we're going to be talking about using a humble mid-range smartphone, and by using certain tips and tricks and techniques that I'm going to share with you today, you can get really pro shots that are going to really make your brand pop. Okay, so smartphone cameras are getting better and better all the time, and if you've got the latest and greatest mobile phone, obviously you've got a bit of an advantage there. But if you use these techniques, you're still going to get just a little bit more out of your smartphone camera. And of course, if you've got a mid-range phone or a phone that's a couple of years old, sticking to these techniques is really going to benefit you. So personally, I'm using a Moto G Mark II. So it's a mid-range phone. It's about 18 months old, so it's feeling pretty tired. And it was only about 140 pounds when I bought it. It's about 180 US dollars. So every photo that I put in today's episode and that I post over there on the blog as well will be a photo that I've taken with the Moto G. So no fancy gear here. The two clients that I'll be taking photos for, number one is a local adventure company that I've just kind of made up. So they do trails and stuff up through the beautiful highlands here in North Wales. And the other client is my wife. She's a food blogger. So you can check her blog out, it's in the show notes below. And she takes incredible photos with a digital SLR camera. But what I'm going to show you is that using my humble Moto G, you can also take fantastic photos that are absolutely usable in a professional environment like that. Okay, so before we get into composition, we're going to look at some basic do's and don'ts of smartphone photography. The little cameras they stick in these phones are fantastic, but they have their strengths which we want to play to, and they also have their weaknesses which we want to try to avoid. So the first of these is shooting in low light. So don't shoot in low light environments. You're not going to get great color saturation, and you're going to get a lot of noise and grain and compression artifacts, and the photos you get just aren't going to look that professional. So the second thing you want to avoid is high speed action. Don't shoot high speed action shots. These things don't have great shutter speeds and you're going to get a lot of motion blur. The third thing you want to avoid is harsh lighting. If you've got your subject and the sunlight's directly on it, most likely you're going to get blown out areas, and you're going to get, in the shadow areas, you're not going to get a lot of detail. And the fourth thing you want to avoid is using digital zoom. Just don't use the digital zoom. It doesn't use the whole sensor. It uses a portion of it and blows it up, and you just end up with a lower grade image. Okay, so they're the things you don't want to do. Here are some of the things you do want to do. Okay, so take more than one photo. Okay, they don't cost you anything. Practice makes perfect. Play around with the settings. They've got great settings even on a mid-range phone like mine. So take 50 photos, take 100 photos, bin the bad ones, and you're more likely to get a bunch of good ones. The second thing you want to do is hold the phone really still. Okay, again, low shutter speeds generally on smartphone cameras. So when you're squeezing it, just squeeze the trigger lightly or tap the screen lightly. Don't be heavy-handed with it because you're going to get motion blur and your images just aren't going to be as sharp. The third thing you want to do is turn the flash off. Okay, just use the available light in the room or in the space that you're taking the photos, because flash again gives you a harsh look. Unless that's what you're after, it's more of a snapshot kind of a look. And the fourth and final thing you want to do is clean that lens. Okay, I mean, these things are not in a padded bag with a lens cap. They're in your pocket. They're down the side of your car seat. You know, there's even stories of them going in toilets. When you're going to take a photo with this thing, give it a quick clean. You'll get much better contrast. You won't get that nasty soft focus look when you get the grease all over the lens. So clean the lens. So now we're going to have a bit of fun and we're going to look at composition. So we're going to look at some composition principles that apply to all photography first up, and then we're going to look at some that apply specifically to smartphone photography. So the first of these rules is the rule of thirds, which you may have heard of before. It's pretty common in photography, and that's basically, imagine that your image is cut up into thirds, horizontally and vertically. Whatever your subject matter is or your focal points in the photo, put them on one of those lines. So if it's a horizon, don't stick it right through the middle, put it on this third or this third, depending on which is going to make a better photo. And same if there's a tree in the shot, don't stick it here or right near the sides, stick it on one of those thirds lines, and you'll find your photos become a lot more interesting with that thirds composition. So the second thing, the second principle is basically bin that first one and look for symmetry. So this works really well with transport, it works well with kind of cityscapes and architecture and geometry, and it also works really well in nature as well. So it's looking for symmetry in objects and sticking it right down the middle can make for a really interesting photo. And the third composition principle that we want to look at is layering your photos. So if you're taking a photo of, say for instance, there's an amazing landscape, amazing mountain range in the background, generally you pick the phone up and go snap and take the shot and then go, oh, it looks so small in my photo, but it looked so much bigger. Well, that's because you're using a lens that's a lot wider angle than the lens in your eye. So the way to add context and interest to that photo is to layer it. So look for things that you can put in that photo that are going to layer it. So what's in the foreground? Is there a nice hut or a big outcropping of rocks? What's in the midground? Is there like a valley or a river or something like that? And then you've got your lovely mountain range in the background. And those items that lead you on that journey to the nice big landscape at the back create a much more interesting photo than if you just point and shoot straight at that seafront or that mountain range or that city skyline. So look for layers. All right, so if you keep those three principles of composition in your mind when you're taking photos, you should definitely see an improvement in your results. Now we're going to look at smartphones specifically and a couple of techniques that will really help you get better results from your smartphone camera. So the first of these is shooting at a right angle to your subject matter. So that means either shooting straight down or shooting profile or shooting straight into your subject matter. So if you do that, you maximize the fact that you've got generally a wide angle lens and that everything's in focus. So the next thing is a little trick you can use to get short depth of field, even with a smartphone camera. So what depth of field is how much depth in your photo is in focus. So a long depth of field, that's typical for a smartphone. You can take a photo of a person with a landscape in the background and it's all going to be tack sharp. Short depth of field is when the person's nicely isolated from the background and everything behind them and in front of them is nicely out of focus. So kind of like the look that I'm getting in filming this right now. I'm using a digital SLR with a 55mm lens on it, and it's about 3 meters away from me. I'm in focus, the background's nicely blurred, and that's telling you, the viewer, to focus on me, the subject matter. So with your smartphone camera, it's very difficult to get that because it's a tiny lens, a tiny sensor, and a tiny gap between the two. But there is a way you can force short depth of field even with a smartphone. And the way to do that is, say for instance, I was taking a photo of a cupcake and I had in the background, I had a cup of tea and some napkins or something like that. So I've set up my scene. Now, if I have the phone and the cupcake fairly close together and the rest of the scene a lot further away, that forces a short depth of field. The background will still be blurred because that short depth of field effect gets stronger the closer you get to the camera. So the trick is get your subject matter really close to your phone, as close as it can focus, still fitting in the shot and composing it nicely. And then put your background as far back as you can without ruining the composition of the photo. That will give you a nice forced short depth of field, and it will give you a really nice shot. Okay, and the last thing you want to do is play around with angles. Okay, so whether you're taking your square on shots or you're looking at your symmetry or taking it for forced depth of field or whatever, don't just assume that the best shot is landscape or portrait just because that's obvious. Often just tweaking the angle can make a really big difference. Don't do it enough that it looks like you made a mistake. If you're going to do it, go a little bit of a way, kind of 20 degrees, 30 degrees or more. But if you do that, you can sometimes get a much more interesting photo. Okay, so they're basically some smartphone techniques, some general composition rules, some do's and don'ts. There's a cheat sheet for them all over there on the blog, so go and have a look at that, get that for free. And there's also a bunch of photos that I've stuck on there that I've taken with my mid-range smartphone here to show you that it can be done and hopefully give you some confidence to go out and reel off a bunch of photos and get some great photos to use for your business. So I hope you found that valuable. If you did, don't forget to like and share. And if you're new to Rocketland TV, please subscribe below. Or if you're watching this over on Facebook, like the Rocketland Facebook page. And if you've got any questions about this or any other topic on visual communications, please put it in the comments section below. We'll do our best to answer it. Until next time, see you later.